So welcome everyone. It's glad to have you back for these online meditation sessions and talks and discussions. So we're starting a series of talks on sort of how to meditate. I've been getting quite a few questions about the how-to kind of aspect of meditation. So I thought I'd address some of it, and you may know most of it if you've been meditating for a while, but I kind of invite you to just kind of hang in there and see if something new piques your interest or perhaps shifts how you're approaching your meditations. So today I'm going to talk about awareness of breath, what we just practiced in our sitting, which on the surface seems pretty simple in so many ways. And, I've had questions like, why the breath for so long, and what's so special about the breath? And it seems to be such a core practice in all spiritual traditions, not just in insight meditation. So I'll get into that a little bit, describe where it comes from, and then some of the nuances in practicing awareness of breath meditation. There's a lot happening, and it's also a really crucial part of our practice. It spills into our daily practice, and it's kind of the anchor for our the rest of the types of practices that we engage in insight meditation. So the awareness of breath comes from the Anapanasati Sutta, which is the awareness of breath sutta. And it's sometimes people talk about awareness of breath as strictly for concentrating the mind, for samadhi. Excuse me. It's just a little tickle. It's not anything more. With all that's happening in the world, somebody coughs and it's like, nah. So yeah, people think of it as for concentration, but it's actually a practice that spans samadhi and into vipassana, into seeing clearly. It encompasses all of the practice. And it's said to be the form of meditation that the Buddha was engaged in when he was under the Bodhi tree and became fully awake. He was practicing the awareness of breath, the Anapanasati meditations, which actually goes beyond awareness of breath. And he was known to practice it when they'd go on their rains retreats for 3 months, and he'd come back and they'd say, oh, what new cool meditations did you practice? And he'd say, I sat and I was aware of my breath. So it's a key practice. If you get right into the sutta, the Anapanasati Sutta, it's actually composed of 16 different practices, which are divided nice and neatly into 4 sets of 4. And we'll really be just talking about the first set of 4, which is the breath and the body. They then go on, the sutta then goes on and talks about combining that with a focus on what's perceived by the senses. And then it goes on to mind and mental formations, emotions that we sort of concoct with regards to what we perceive. The mind gets involved as soon as we have a sense experience, and usually has a comment or two, or interpretation, judgment, decision, a story, and so on. And then the last 4 is pure vipassana, seeing deeply seeing the nature of existence in terms of impermanence, selflessness, and suffering or dukkha. So as I said, this talk, we're going to explore the, the first four. I'll just read a quote from the sutta. There is the case where a practitioner, having gone to the wilderness, to the shade of a tree, or to an empty building, sits down, folding their legs crosswise, holding their body erect, and setting mindfulness to the fore. Always mindful, they breathe in, mindful, they breathe out. Breathing in, they discern, I am breathing in long, or breathing out long. They discern, I am breathing out long. Or breathing in short, they discern, I am breathing in short. Or breathing out short, they discern, I am breathing out short. They train themselves, I will breathe insensitive to the entire body. They train themselves, I will breathe out sensitive to the entire body. They train themselves, I will breathe in calming the bodily formation. They train themselves, I will breathe out calming the bodily formation. So you can see the sutta takes you through just settling attention on the breath, looking at the nature of the breath. Is it long? Is it short? Rough, smooth, deep, shallow. They gave example there of long and short. And then expanding that, because really the breath meditation is a body meditation because you're following the sensation in the body of breathing. You're not thinking about breathing, you're just simply following that sensation, whether it's at the tip of the nose or the belly, you're following the sensation of the breath in the body. So the first step in it is taking the breath as the exclusive object of attention, which we did in the meditation. Focus that attention onto the breath. And it doesn't much matter whether you choose the nose, the throat, the chest, the belly. I mean, you just choose one, and it can be different every time. You just sort of where is it predominant today? And I mean, the more you practice this, the more you kind of just fall into a rhythm with your breath meditation. But I wouldn't spend a lot of time sort of thinking about, where to draw your attention in terms of feeling the breath. For me, it tends to be the tip of the nose or the belly, deep into the belly as well. Find it very settling to follow the breath deep in the belly. And why the breath? Why do we follow the breath? Well, for one thing, it's always there. It's if you're not breathing, you're not alive. So you're not practicing. So it's something it's always there. It's in the present moment. It's always happening now. There's a breath at some stage, inhaling, exhaling, pausing, always in the present moment. And it's connected to the body. So it allows us to come to be embodied. If you've heard that term in this practice, being embodied. The breath can help us be embodied in our present moment experience. Read a poem called The Breath of Life. Donna Faulds is the author. I breathe in all that is, awareness expanding to take everything in, as if my heart beats the world into being. From the unnamed vastness beneath the mind, I breathe my way into wholeness and healing. Inhalation, exhalation, each breath a yes, and a letting go, a journey, and a coming home. So we're just letting the breath breathe itself. Breathe flowing naturally. Sometimes people, well, the mind hears, I'm going to do a breath meditation and thinks that, well, I have to manipulate it, maybe a deeper breath and felt abdomen breathing, or maybe I need to make a little ujjayi noise like I do in the yoga class where I make some noise while I breathe. None of that is necessary. It's just the mind conjuring up ways to distract itself. So no need to manipulate or control the experience in any way. Letting it breathe itself, breathing naturally. And then we can notice how the breath changes. How it is, how it in the moment, how it changes with our moods. Is it shallow sometimes, perhaps, if there's anxiety present? Is it fast sometimes, perhaps, if there's some excitement? Just kind of noticing where the breath's at in that present moment. Is it long? Is it short? As the Buddha says in the sutta. And then, of course, the mind's going to wander. And I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a few moments. The mind keeps wandering, chattering away. And the instruction in the awareness of breath is, once you've noticed that the mind's off, you're down a thought train, gently and patiently bring it back to home, to center, back to the breath. And if that happens 100, 200 times in a sitting, then that's what happens. It's not a problem. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just what is. And sometimes, the mind will chatter away, and other times it'll be less so. So every meditation's different. we don't need to develop any standard. What happens is we have a really calm sitting, and the mind goes, "Oh, I've got this," and it's got you all right. The mind's got you, because the next time you sit and you come sit down with that sort of standard in mind, the mind's going to chatter. Maybe not, but it tends to. So just being with what is, and realizing that every time you bring the mind back, you're reinforcing the awareness, mindfulness, exercising that mindful muscle. So you can kind of congratulate yourself for noticing. Somebody pointed out, I think last session, that a teacher had instructed him to, welcome awareness. Hi, awareness. Welcome, I'm back, or something along those lines. So rather than it being a struggle with the mind, just, there, awareness. Awareness is always there. Awareness doesn't go anywhere. The mind kind of draws us back out and away on a thought train, but awareness is always there. And so we're bringing a sense of self-compassion to the practice as well. A sense that it's not a problem. There's no right or wrong. There's no good meditation, bad meditation, good meditator, bad meditator. Some people might think, oh, my mind wanders so much. I'm a terrible meditator. I'm not cut out for this. And of course, it's just a thought. There's no right. There is no wrong. There's no problem. The job isn't to achieve some particular standard. And as best you can, when you notice those kind of judgments, notice them as thoughts arising and let them go. Let them be, and come back to the breath. I've used this analogy a few times in these sessions where you look at the mind as the sky. weather patterns come and go without changing the nature of the sky. So all these mental, physical, sensory phenomena rise and fade like changing weather, but the sky's never changed by that. It still remains as it is, as sky. So we're really kind of welcoming whatever comes up, whatever passes through, storms, sunshine. I'm going to read one more poem, and many of you might have heard this one. It's kind of a well-known poem in mindfulness circles, part of mindfulness-based stress reduction, and I think every other mindfulness-based intervention out there, called The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight, the dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. That poem really kind of sums up the practice of letting be, of being, accepting sort of whatever arises in our practice in each moment. And it's not saying, you know, we become a doormat, or it just, we're accepting what's presenting itself into awareness in each moment. As soon as you're aware of it, it's already happened. So any resistance to it is resisting what's already happened. Like once that thought arises, a judgment, a story arises, it's already happened. Awareness has seen it. You're simply going, there it is. There's something arising. And as best you can, just being okay with it. And then the fourth part of the first part of the Anapanasati Sutti is opening to the entire body. Excuse me. And that's how we were ending the meditation. So we actually probably started with the body. Often I do go to the breath and then open back up to the body. And the breath is very present within that entire experience, but it's within the context of the entire body. So it's bringing us into an awareness of the body, which is so important in this practice. You know, doing body scans, mindful walking, any kind of mindful movement like yoga, tai chi, qigong, whatever it might be, mindful stretching, mindful weightlifting. It could be, mindful running. You're engaged in some movement and you're conscious of what's going on as you're moving, conscious of what's going on in the body. So thoughts will start, if you're engaged in, if you're a runner or or a walker, you'll notice the mind will start to wander away. It'll get grabbed by, a bird will chirp, and then the mind will hear bird, then a story about a bird, and then some, off on some vacation that you had where there were a lot of birds, and then when you notice, you just come back to the bodily experience of whatever you're doing. We do mindful walking very slowly when we start, but you can actually speed it up into a regular paced walking or even running. I learned to mindfully run with the Thich Nhat Hanh monks. I stayed with them at their monastery, and one of the younger monks was a runner. and he saw that I was going out for jogging, and then I would, during the day, when I would practice, I would do this really slow mindful walking practice. So he came up and said, you can do the mindful movement while you're running too. And I never really, it kind of occurred to me, but I never really thought about it that way. And he said, yeah. So what he said was, when you mindfully walk, you usually bring your attention to your foot touching the floor. So then the faster you go, so if you walk a little faster, you tend to bring your attention up further, maybe into your thighs. Then a little faster, it might come up into your hips. He said when you're running, it actually can be more in your upper body and your arms moving. So the faster you go, bring the attention up higher into the body. So as we started to run, I sort of got the idea of this, just this feeling of I tripped over a few logs. He likes to run in it's more like trail running than, well, it is trail running that he does more than I was used to. And then bringing mindfulness, there's a lot going on, but after several weeks of that, I grew to appreciate this kind of body awareness practice. So mindful walking, body scans, breath practice, it's all part of being embodied, coming out of our minds and into our body, which is so important in this practice. I think we ignore what's going on in our bodies a lot of the time. And even just as a healing practice, it's very helpful, because the body's constantly sending us signals, messages about what's going on. It's kind of an early warning system in many ways that knows things before the mind cognizes what's happening. In many ways, that's what intuition is, gut feeling, body's sending messages that the mind hasn't grasped or grokked. So when we do this practice, what comes up is thoughts. The first time anybody gets into this kind of practice, when we first meditate, we discover how chatty our minds are. And it can be kind of disturbing when you're realizing that how chatty your mind is, first of all, and perhaps the more disturbing part of it is there's really nothing you can do about it. It just goes on and on and on. Until you took a look, you thought like you were actually under control, that you were the one doing the chatting. Right? You thought you were kind of behind all this chatting. Perhaps even a thought arose, that said, perhaps I shouldn't be doing all this chatting to myself. Perhaps I shouldn't be chatting so much. It seems like a lot of nonsense that the mind can conjure up. If someone actually tried to have a conversation with you like this, you'd probably lose interest pretty fast. You may even run in the other direction. And when you try to stop it, it just keeps going. Have you noticed that? If you ever tried to stop thoughts, they just keep going. It seems they're going on and on without your consent, without any intention. So you might start to think, why does my mind do this? Why does my mind chatter like this? It is kind of strange, eh? Like when you think about it, the mind just chatters without my consent, no intention, chattering away, out of control. Really, the mind is trying to impose some order on your experience, trying to create some order. out of what is, a pretty chaotic world. And as you practice more and more, you discover that all this talking, all this mind chatter, it's not a problem. We make problems out of it in our practice, and we may realize that it's the talking to ourselves that seems to cause problems, to make things seem like they're falling apart. I mean, you can talk yourself into misery in a moment. You notice that just the mind can start storytelling about something, and you can go from feeling pretty happy and content to feeling kind of crappy, miserable, pretty fairly quickly. So we disentangle ourselves from thoughts in this practice. There's a discrimination that comes up as we do this practice. There's thinking, and then there's awareness of thinking. We disentangle them. Without awareness, it's just kind of all one big knot. We disentangle it. We can say, oh, there's thinking, and then there is awareness or mindfulness of thinking. We can use the power of our mind in this way to create a new kind of order, a level of order. There's thought and awareness of thought. So as thoughts will change and speak without your consent, continue to do that. But the light of awareness always seems to be there, seeing and knowing this thought. And it's the same with emotions. Emotions just happen. You can feel bad when you don't want to feel bad. It's again, without your consent. So we're not trying to block out thoughts. We're just practicing being with them in a different way. We're being with our thoughts in a different way, holding them in awareness. So how we relate to thoughts is a key part of this practice. Bringing some self-compassion to our practice is also a key part of awareness of breath. So we notice judgments. That's fine. It's, again, thoughts arising. We bring this kind of a self-kindness, I guess you could call it. How you would be with a good friend that needs support and caring. You can bring that kind of caring and sensitivity to yourself when you're doing this practice. It can be very helpful. I was reading a book by Matthew Ricard. It's a French man who spent over 30 years studying with Tibetan monks, Rinpoches, and so on. And he starts his meditations with this notion of self-kindness, bringing that sense of caring and support that you would for a good friend, and also bringing a sense of common humanity, that we're all imperfect beings, kind of messy. It's our human condition, and just realizing that and conjuring up again some compassion for our practice. In a scientific way, it also downregulates the threat response system that gets triggered. So it deactivates the threat defense system and activates a caring system. So we practice the breath meditation as a way to really familiarize ourselves with this object that is always there to bring awareness to. So we can come into the breath at any moment. And it's particularly useful if you're wanting to understand an aspect of what you're experiencing. If you want to draw yourself and anchor and come home, as that first poem spoke about, to come home to awareness. It can become a kind of a default for coming home. Just in the same theme with the Thich Nhat Hanh monks that I lived with, and I was the very first layperson to ever move in with these monks. So it was an interesting experience. They asked for somebody to help them paint. They sent out an email and said, "We need to paint. Is there any volunteers?" And the email popped right up on my screen, and I replied right away and said, "Yeah, I've done a lot of painting. I would love to come and spend months with you and help you paint." And they emailed me right back and said, "Good, you're in." And then they sent out another email 30 seconds later saying, "Well, we found a painter." So it all happened within 3 minutes probably. Here I was all booked and ready to go to live with them. And one interesting thing they did was they randomly rang this big bell during the day. And no matter what you were doing, because we all had chores and service and different activities, whatever you were doing when that bell went, you would just stop and you would come to your breath. And this is, of course, the Thich Nhat Hanh mindfulness bell that he is well known for. So just remembering to come back to re-embody, just in case, see where's your mind, where's your mind at in this moment, and to come back to the present moment. And I took that, and if this was years ago, you could actually download a mindfulness bell and put it on your computer. You probably put one on your phone too, and it just dings randomly. And you can do the same thing with the technology that's out there. Just a reminder to come to the breath. I just noticed. So my laptop broke, like just completely dead. So I'm borrowing my wife's laptop, and she has a little sticker on it. Is it backwards for you guys? No. So it says breathe. I just noticed it. So it's sitting right here beside the track, the pad or track pad. So that's something else you can do. Put it on your TV, your remote, your computer, just as a reminder to simply breathe, to come home to that breath. Or every time you hear a sound, set the intention that every time you hear a car horn, a ding from your computer or your phone, clicking clock, whatever it might be, a bird chirping, every time you use that as a sound, a reminder, that sound is a reminder to come to your breath, just bring your attention to several breaths, and then continue with whatever you were doing. You can use reminders like every time you come to a doorway as a reminder, or some place in your house or in your workplace. It just reminded me, for years I did stairs. And every time I came to stairs, I would mindfully walk up the stairs or mindfully walk down the stairs. And if I forgot and I got halfway or even all the way, and then I remembered, oh, I forgot to do that mindfully, I'd walk back down and do it again. So I kind of trained the mind to not forget quite as much. Or each time you initiate a conversation, or each time you're about to speak, take a breath and feel a breath and then speak. It's a beautiful kind of pause that we can bring into our practice. So the breath is this anchor, this home base for our practice. It allows us to embody, come to the present moment in an embodied way. Very important part of our practice. And as we move forward and we look at other forms of practice, such as choiceless awareness, will be the next one. And then what I call a non-meditating meditating. So is where you let go of the meditator. The breath is still present as an anchor to the present moment. It's a key part of our practice. It's where I begin every sitting I do, and it's a practice that I engage in if I feel like I'm a little antsy, if that's the word, or a little thrown off kilter. The practice I engage in is coming to the breath. If I want to understand something, if I want to understand what an emotion is that's present, so an intense emotion arises, boredom, anger, impatience, it'll be the body that I'll go to, the breath and the body, to understand that emotion. So I'll end it there and open it up for some questions and comments. I have to unmute everybody, just a minute. Okay.
Did I understand anything about, did you say about the mind is trying to make sense of stuff? What was that little nugget of gold?
It's trying to make order.
Order.
Sorry. It's trying to make order out of your experience. So all this stuff that's going on, the mind is constantly trying to create some order, and that's partly why it's so hard to let go of this. You'll have kind of almost an existential angst, that an antsy feeling, because the mind doesn't want to let go of creating this order from what's going on. So yeah, when that antsiness or that kind of anxiousness that arises can be that kind of the mind resisting you letting it kind of be ignored, and you're just coming to the present moment, and you're not sort of you're not buying into the storytelling that it's doing. So it constantly tells stories to try and make sense of what's happening, right? This is, you can see that if you really look. The mind, all this chatter is this constant, partly some of it's distraction, but a lot of it's the mind creating this kind of making sense of what's coming in as experience through the sense doors. Yeah. So we can so that we can kind of separate. So that's one order of reality that we can, or dimension that we can exist in, is just this constant mind chatter that's without our consent. There's a word that Ajashanti uses that just when he said that when I first heard that, that just struck me as, yeah, this is without my consent. You know, we hear automatic, but this is just happening without our consent. You can start to kind of separate thought and awareness of thought, and come to a new kind of order of being, when you can separate the two. And we'll get into that more as we get into choiceless awareness, and in particular just resting in awareness, this kind of non-meditating meditating, which will be the week after next, which is just kind of open awareness. Yeah.
I found the instruction that you gave tonight, which you've given before many times, to be very helpful. The one, just try to be mindful or present for just this inhalation or just this exhalation. And I've heard it, but today I sort of practiced more and played more with it during the meditation. And for me, it actually seemed quite powerful. I tend to be very goal-oriented and very lots of judgment. So I'll sort of be setting a longer objective. I need to be concentrating for a longer period of time. And so I'm either looking back at what I did, and it's either maybe if I succeeded, like you said, the mind saying, I got this. So a little bit of pride or something, okay, I did that, or annoyance that, you know, I should be able to do better, or looking ahead and thinking on the next few minutes or whatever. And just focusing on a single inhalation or exhalation sort of changed, at least for me today, really changed the dynamic, because it's just a focus on what's happening right now, and then kind of letting go of that inhalation or that exhalation. There really isn't time for any judgment or taking any sort of pride in that one sort of inhalation or exhalation. It just seems to flow fluidly. And then of course, some of them connect together and you stay there for a while, but it doesn't matter. You sort of just already, your focus, at least mine, was moving to the next one without any particular concern about what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the next one. So today I found that really, really helpful.
Yeah, and that's very much that balanced effort that we talked about last session, where you're, you know, applying just enough effort or energy to be present for one moment, one breath, you know, one moment, and that's all the mindfulness you need. To say that we're going to sit for 45 minutes and be aware of every breath is just not realistic. So it's not going to happen. Maybe if you were on a 3-month retreat, by the end of the retreat, it might arise. But you know, even then, if you set it up as a goal and strive for it, it probably wouldn't even happen then. So yeah, it's that relaxed, that balanced effort, and it's also the sense of beginning again, beginning anew. So if the last breath, my mind was off somewhere, this next one, it's a new moment. I begin again. I can be aware of this next breath, or this next inhalation. Yeah, and then start again and again and again. That balanced effort that you described so well.
Stephen, I really enjoy the guided meditations. It helps me stay focused and also reminds me of things that I tend to forget. It's just good to be constantly reminded of some of the principles. And I thank you for that. I really benefited from the guided meditations.
Yeah, just briefly, I'll continue to do them. Next week I'll do choiceless awareness, and next week non-meditating, meditating, and and as I said at the outset, if you've been doing this a long time, guiding may just kind of get in the way with how you usually practice. Feel free to mute the the instructions.
I'll also offer that there are some times when the guiding isn't as essential or isn't as, I would say, big an influence, but there's lots of times when if I listen to a guided meditation or when you do them, yeah, it really does. It kind of takes the mind on a journey, and like a guided journey, and it can really help the mind kind of, be in the moment, and maybe I use the term distracted. It distracts me from the thought chain and the thought train maybe, and yeah, so I think it's maybe not for everybody, but I certainly can concur as well.
And this practice is all about practicing. So when any talks I give are just pointing towards things that we do when we practice. So there's being able to give a guided meditation actually exemplifies how those, how what I'm going to say in the talk applies in a meditation very concretely. I don't have to kind of talk about how you apply it in a meditation. You just did it in a meditation. I can refer to it, and then you can get an experiential sense of what, like what was being spoken about in terms of balanced effort. You can get an experiential sense because you just practiced just being with one breath, not trying to be with the next 300 breaths. So you have a very experiential sense of it. So that's why I find the guided meditations can be very helpful in this context. Yeah.
I guess my comment is a bit more administrative, but I was wondering last week, and I figured other folks might be wondering, since we don't have the jar for Donna, kind of where if there's a way to still kind of contribute, and you had mentioned that we can email money transfer you, so I just kind of want to confirm that that's the email that you send us emails from, that's the one that we could send it to.
Yeah, just the Stephen _Hick@carleton.ca email, which is on if you go to the website for the group, it's there. I think I included it in the mail chimp message that goes out as well, the email for Donna. Yeah.
I missed it.
Yeah, it was
But
there today.
any email that you get from me, I don't know what the MailChimp says. It's probably not my email that it's coming from, is it? Or is it? I don't know. But if it's the Carlton email, if it says Carlton in it, then it's at my email, and that'll get to me.
So today I don't know how people are feeling after 7 days and kind of physical distancing and social isolation and seeing some, I don't know, various states of, humanity or inhumanity. But I've been feeling a bit more, I don't want to say depressed, but certainly more anxious. And today I sort of sought out meditation. And it made me think about a year or two ago, I was reading, I think is it the Three Gems, Stephen, where they talk about seeking refuge in the Buddha and seeking refuge in the Dharma and seeking refuge in the Sangha. And today I sought refuge in a really deliberate way for the first time in a long time. And just to sit for a little while. And as I was saying, I thought, well, I could have waited and sat tonight, but I felt there was a need to kind of seek a refuge. It was good to kind of sit down and be with the breath today and try to, and bring some intention to it, because certainly all the things that are swirling around kind of feed all that frenzy and anxiety that I think at least I'm feeling and I see around me. So I find your lessons and from the past and from today to be really helpful.
I'll just say ditto that. Really resonates with me what you just said, Carl. It's getting long, this whole thing. So yeah, refuge, it's good stuff.
Just to echo that sense of undercurrent of anxiety that gets created, that arises with the pandemic that we're living through, is very real. Particularly if we're, kind of news junkies, or we're checking the news a lot, reading online news and watching the news. It can actually create a fair bit of anxiety. You may want to, all of us, kind of monitor how much of that we're consuming and noticing the impact it has on us. Even when I step away from the news, I find there's this real sense of anxiety that's there, almost like a global, national, community angst, to use that word again, that's present. And I have found that awareness of body and breath has been so important as a practice for me as I'm living through this. It's a practice that it can be calming and steadying. It's that paradox of the practice. It's a practice that calms and steadies, but we're not looking for anything to happen in particular. So, it's a paradox. We're not attached to an outcome, and we're with things as they are. But it does have the effect of calming and steadying the mind. It's just what it is based on based on karma, causes and condition. One of the causes of calm and steadiness is focused attention. So if you put those causes and conditions in place, then those causes in place, that condition is more likely to arise. But having said that, I've never practiced in decades so much awareness of breath as I have in the last month. Yeah.
One thing I found really helpful, it's free online on YouTube, and it's Yoga with Adrienne. And she has a 30-day plan. The practice sessions are easy to follow and not that long, so it's not a huge time commitment, perhaps 25 minutes or half an hour. I've been trying to do that most days and have found it very calming and helpful. So whether you know yoga or not, it's still worthwhile having a look at it.
Well, I would just echo what others have been saying about the current situation and feelings of anxiety and so forth. And it certainly has been affecting me. It's just sort of omnipresent. And I've been trying really hard over the last few weeks to get up early and spend some time in the morning doing usually some yoga. So it's a very breath-focused meditative yoga. And I've been finding that's very calming and grounding. And it just sort of keeps things sort of at a manageable level. I mean, it never quite goes away. This is just, I'm finding this all very, very strange, but it keeps it at a manageable level. But the last several days, I've just been busy with other stuff. There's some real intense stuff that I was doing with work. Then there was a leak in the plumbing at home that I had to sort out, and a bunch of things. And I just didn't get to any of that. And I just felt that it's just been building up the last several days. And just spending the time this evening has really helped just with the grounding and calming. So I'm going to make an effort tomorrow to get back to my regular, either just sitting meditation or the yoga.
Okay, everyone, I think I will end it there. Again, so wonderful to connect in this way with you all, and I appreciate everybody making the effort to be here to support each of us as part of this Sangha. So
Thanks, Stephen.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you, Stephen.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stephen.
Night.
Everyone. Take care.
Night. Namaste.
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 Thanks, Danielle, for reminding me about the Dana. I've totally forgotten.
Yeah. Take care. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.